I never thought loneliness could echo so loudly in a room full of silence, but that night, wrapped in an old fraying robe, my hair still damp from a shower I didn't really need, I felt the weight of every second since my husband walked out the door. 3 weeks divorced, 35 years old, and staring at the sink like it might tell me what to do next. My apartment smelled like boxed wine and microwave dinners, and the only sounds were the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of old floorboards settling like they missed him too. I wasn't expecting company. I wasn't even expecting to feel anything anymore. That's why, when the knock came sharp, quick, and out of place, I jumped like someone had grabbed me from behind. For a moment, I froze. It was late. I wasn't dressed. I was emotionally raw. But something told me to open the door anyway. When I did, I saw Ethan, my neighbor from 2 doors down. We'd exchanged maybe 6 words in the entire year I'd lived. Here, casual nods in the elevator, half smiles in the lobby. I knew he worked nights sometimes, judging by when I'd hear his boots echoing down the hallway. And I knew he was easy to look at in that grungy, quiet way. Tonight, he wore a black hoodie and jeans, a Tupperware container cradled in one hand like it was something secret. He didn't look surprised to see me, even though I was a mess with hair clinging to my cheeks, no makeup, vulnerability painted all over me like a bruise. "Hey," he said, his voice low and warm. "I made chili. Way too much. Thought maybe you'd want some." Just like that. No pity, no awkwardness, just kindness. And God, I didn't even know how much I needed it until that exact second. I blinked at him like he was an illusion. "You brought me chili?" I repeated, voice cracking a little. He gave a slow shrug. "You've had a rough few weeks. Figured it might help. It's spicy though. Fair warning." There was a soft smile tugging at the edge of his mouth, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt something other than heartbreak. It wasn't love, not yet. It wasn't even lust. It was relief. Something solid in a world that had started to feel liquid. I stepped aside. "Come in." We didn't sit at the table. We didn't bother with plates. We plopped down on my kitchen floor like teenagers, backs against the cabinets, legs stretched out, sharing chili straight from the container with 2 mismatched spoons. It was messy and imperfect like me, and it felt real in a way nothing else had in weeks. We talked. I don't even remember how it started, but suddenly we were unraveling everything. He told me about growing up in Nova Scotia, about the sister he barely spoke to anymore, about how he'd once driven across the country just to feel like he was moving forward. I told him about my ex, about how the silence in the apartment sometimes scared me more than the fights ever had, about how I hated that I still slept on one side of the bed. At one point, I cried, just a few tears, quickly wiped away, but he noticed. He didn't panic. He didn't change the subject. He just reached out and let his fingers brush mine, warm and steady. "You don't have to pretend with me," he said. I don't think anyone had ever told me that before. Not like that. Not without expecting something in return. Eventually, the chili was gone, and my heart felt lighter, just barely, but enough to notice. I don't know how long we sat there, but at some point, I leaned my head on his shoulder, and he didn't pull away. His hoodie smelled like laundry soap and something else, something masculine and safe. I closed my eyes. I must have fallen asleep like that, because when I woke up, the room was dim and quiet, and he was gone. A folded note sat on the counter. "Didn't want to wake you. Hope you slept okay. I'll see you around." It was simple. Nothing romantic. Nothing dramatic. But it felt like a promise. I stood there in my kitchen at midnight, holding that note like it was something precious, and I realized I wasn't completely broken. Not yet. There was still something inside me that could be warmed by a smile. A conversation, a bowl of too spicy chili from a man who knocked on my door for no reason other than kindness. And that scared me even more than the silence. Because, for the first time in a long time, I wanted something again. I wanted more. It started slowly. Like a song you've heard before but don't quite recognize until the chorus hits. After that night with Ethan, after the chili, the floor, the quiet understanding, I thought maybe that was it. A one-time kindness from a decent guy who felt sorry for the sad girl in apartment 3B. But the next day, he texted me. Just a simple, "Did you eat real breakfast today?" And it made my heart stutter. I hadn't. I didn't even remember if I'd brushed my teeth. But that one sentence felt like someone had reached through the fog and found me. I told him no. And 10 minutes later, there was a knock on the door again. This time it was him, holding two coffees and a paper bag full of greasy breakfast sandwiches. "Emergency delivery," he said with that lopsided grin, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And that's how it began, something soft, something unspoken. Every day after that, he found little ways to check in. Like he knew I needed grounding but didn't want to admit it. We didn't call it anything. I don't think either of us was ready for that. But there was a rhythm to it. And I started craving it. His knock on my door. His voice. The way he'd lean against the counter like he belonged there. We'd talk about everything and nothing, bad movies, old music, the worst decisions we'd ever made. It was easy with him. Maybe because he didn't look at me like I was broken. Maybe because he didn't try to fix me. He just showed up. He stayed. And slowly, I started to forget how to be numb. One night, it all tipped over. We were curled up on my couch watching an old indie movie neither of us really liked. The kind with too much symbolism and not enough plot. I was tucked against his side, my cheek against his shoulder, and his hand was resting lightly on my thigh. Nothing overt, nothing rushed, but the air between us had changed, warmer, charged, like a match waiting to be struck. I remember looking up at him just as he looked down at me, and for a moment, neither of us moved. Then he leaned in. His lips brushed mine so gently. I barely felt it at first. It was soft, tentative, full of hesitation, like he was testing the water before diving in. But I kissed him back, and that was it. That was all it took for the dam to break. What started as a whisper turned into something deeper. His hands slid up my sides, my fingers tangled in the back of his shirt, and everything around us disappeared. There was nothing delicate about it after that, nothing slow or polite. We needed each other, desperately. We didn't make it to the bedroom. We barely made it off the couch. Clothes came off in a trail from the hallway to the rug. His skin on mine was grounding, anchoring, like he was trying to remind me I was real. I remember the way he whispered my name against my neck, the way his body fit against mine like we'd done this 1,000 times in another life. And when it was over, we just lay there, sweaty, tangled, breathless. His chest rose and fell beneath my cheek, and for the first time in forever, I didn't feel empty. I didn't feel ashamed. I felt alive. I should have been terrified. I should have panicked, questioned it, pulled back. But I didn't. It felt too good, too easy, too right. And after that night, everything changed again. He started staying over. At first just once in a while, then almost every night. He'd brush his teeth in my bathroom. His boots sat by the door, and my bed didn't feel too big anymore. We cooked together, laughed, made love like we were trying to unwrite every bad memory we'd ever had. It wasn't casual, not anymore. But still, neither of us said what we were. I didn't push. I didn't want to break whatever fragile, perfect thing we were building. I was scared to call it love in case it disappeared. And then came the night everything cracked. He was in the shower, steam curling out from the half-closed bathroom door, and his phone lit up on the nightstand. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't trying to pry, but the screen caught my eye, and the words slammed into me before I could look away. Miss you already. Last night was unforgettable. XO Claire. My breath caught in my throat. I stared at the message like it had teeth. Last night, unforgettable. Claire. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I didn't know what to think. Was she someone from before me? Someone now? Someone ongoing? My mind spiraled, dragging every quiet moment into suspicion. Every night he said he was working late became something ugly, something possible. I felt stupid, naive, like I'd let myself fall for someone who was never really mine. When he came out of the bathroom, towels slung low on his hips, hair dripping, smile soft, I couldn't even speak. I just held up the phone. The moment he saw the screen, everything in his expression shifted, his eyes wide, jaw tense. It's not what you think, he said immediately, which only made my blood boil hotter. He reached for me, but I stepped back like his touch might burn. Don't, I whispered, my voice shaking. Don't lie to me. I felt like a fool, like I'd opened my chest and let him see everything, my fear, my tenderness, my hope, and he'd look me in the eye while holding someone else's body in his bed. I didn't want to hear excuses. I didn't want apologies. I wanted to feel nothing again. I wanted to go back to before that first knock on my door, but it was too late. I'd already let him in. And now, I didn't know how to get him out. The next few days felt like drowning with my eyes open. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't sit still without my mind replaying that moment, his phone glowing in the dark, Claire's name on the screen like a slap across the face. I kept hearing her words in my head. Miss you already. Last night was unforgettable. I hated how they crawled under my skin, how they kept me locked in this place between heartbreak and rage. I wanted to believe Ethan. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. But that message, it didn't lie. And neither did the way his face twisted when he saw it. Not guilt, not denial, just caught. And the worst part, the second he started to explain, my body wanted to forgive him, like a reflex. Like my heart hadn't learned its lesson the first time it was shattered. But I didn't let him speak. I couldn't. I opened the front door, pointed toward the hallway, and said, "Go." My voice was ice. I didn't cry, not in front of him. But the second the door closed behind him, I collapsed to the floor, shaking with sobs I couldn't control. Because even if he had told the truth that it was a mistake, that it was before me, that he wasn't seeing her anymore, none of that erased the fact that I felt betrayed, that I had finally let someone back in, and it had led me right back to this same damn pain. The silence after he left was deafening. His hoodie still hung over the back of the kitchen chair. His toothbrush was still in my bathroom. His boots sat by the door, and I hated that I didn't throw them out. I just stared at them like they might come to life and give me answers. I kept checking my phone, waiting for him to text, call, explain. But he didn't. For once, the man who always showed up didn't. And maybe that said more than any apology ever could. But just when I thought I was finally coming to terms with it, when I was starting to delete our photos and push it all down like old grief, a knock came at the door. My breath caught. Part of me thought it might be him. I wasn't sure if I wanted to slam the door in his face or throw myself into his arms. But when I opened it, it wasn't Ethan standing there. It was her. Claire. She was everything I imagined and everything I feared. Tall, poised, naturally gorgeous in that effortless kind of way. Her eyes scanned me like she expected a scene, like she was bracing herself. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice low even. I didn't say anything. I should have said no, I should have told her to go to hell. But something in her face, not smugness, not victory, but almost sadness, made me step aside. We sat across from each other at the small kitchen table where I'd once laughed with Ethan over cold takeout. Now it felt foreign, cold. Claire looked around the apartment, taking in the signs of him, the boots, the hoodie, the coffee mug still in the sink. Her gaze softened for a moment, and then she looked at me and said, "I didn't come here to start anything. I came because he doesn't. No, I'm here, and because I think you deserve to know the truth." My stomach turned. She told me she and Ethan had been together for 3 years, engaged for one of them. They'd broken up officially about a month before he and I started seeing each other, but it hadn't been clean. We weren't exactly over, she admitted. He said he needed space, said he needed time to think, and then he ghosted me. A week later, he stopped by to drop off a box of my things and told me he was trying something new. He didn't say it was you, but I figured it out. Her voice didn't shake. She didn't sound angry, just resigned. I sent that message after I saw him. The night before he brought you breakfast, we ran into each other, talked. I thought maybe he wanted to fix things. He kissed me. I thought he regretted leaving. She took a breath. Then I never heard from him again. My heart twisted. I felt sick, not just because of the betrayal, but because I had no idea who Ethan really was. How could I have fallen so hard, so blindly? Claire reached across the table and touched my hand lightly. "He loved me once," she said, "and maybe now he loves you. But he doesn't know what the hell he wants, and he's not going to stop hurting people until he figures that out." She left without asking for anything, no closure, no revenge, just the truth. And I sat there, shaking, until the sun started to rise. The next day, Ethan came. He looked tired, hollow. "I didn't know she came," he said quietly, standing in my doorway like a ghost. "But I'm glad she did." I didn't speak. I just looked at him, waiting for whatever came next. "I wasn't honest with you," he admitted. "Claire and I were over, but I should have told you how complicated it was. I should have told you what I was carrying. I didn't because I was scared. You made me feel something real again, and I didn't want to screw it up." His eyes were glassy. "But I did. I hurt you, and I don't know if I can fix it. But I had to try." I wanted to scream at him, tell him he didn't get to cry now, that he should have been honest, that he knew what honesty would have meant to someone like me, who had already been lied to by a man she loved. But instead, I just asked, "Why me?" He looked at me, eyes soft, vulnerable. "Because when I was around you, I stopped feeling like a screw-up. You made me want to be better. That was the worst part, because I believed him, and I hated that I still loved him anyway. I wish I could say I slammed the door in his face, that I told Ethan to leave and never come back, that I reclaimed my power right then and there. But love doesn't work like that, not the messy, inconvenient kind that creeps into your bones when you aren't looking." I stood there, frozen in the doorway, watching the men who had both healed me and cracked me wide open. My heart wanted to run to him. My mind screamed not to trust him. And between the two, I just stood still. He looked at me like I was his lifeline, like this was his last chance to breathe. And for a split second, I saw the man I had fallen for, the one who brought me chili, who sat with me on the kitchen floor, who held me like I was something worth holding. But then Claire's words echoed in my mind, and the hollow ache returned. "I don't know what to do with you," I whispered. My voice was barely audible. like I was confessing to something sacred and awful all at once. You made me feel again, Ethan. You made me believe that I could open up, that someone could stay. And then you made me doubt every second of it. He took a tentative step forward, but I didn't move. I wasn't ready to let him in again, not physically, not emotionally. I don't want excuses, I said. I want honesty. For once. He nodded slowly, like he'd been waiting to give me that. And for the first time, he told me everything. About Claire, about how their relationship had grown toxic, about how they tried to fix something that was already too broken to hold. How he'd fallen into old patterns, retreating instead of confronting, and how meeting me had scared the hell out of him because he hadn't expected to want someone like that again. You were real, he said, voice thick, and I didn't know how to be real with you without screwing it up. His honesty was like salt in a wound, painful, raw, but strangely cleansing. It didn't excuse what he'd done, but it explained something deeper, and I needed that more than I realized. I didn't invite him in. Not that night. I told him I needed space, that I needed to decide whether what we had was something I could trust again. He respected that, left quietly, like he knew pushing even an inch would ruin whatever thin thread still connected us. For the first time, I took a long, hard look at myself. I realized how much I had defined my worth by who stayed, who left, who called me enough. But maybe this wasn't just about him. Maybe this was about me. Finally learning how to stand still in the aftermath and figure out what I wanted, not what I feared. Days passed. Then a week. And Ethan didn't call. He didn't text. I knew he was waiting, giving me the space I asked for. It made me miss him more. It also made me realize I didn't want someone who completed me. I wanted someone who chose me every day fully, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. I wanted someone who wouldn't run the second things got messy. So I called him. He came over the same night, quiet and careful. We sat on the couch, the same couch where we'd first kissed, where our bodies had tangled in the dark, and it felt both familiar and different, like we were starting over, but not erasing what had come before. I'm not going to pretend I can just forget what happened, I told him. But if you want this, if you want me, you need to meet me where I am. No more secrets. No more half-truths. You come clean always, even when it's ugly, even when it's hard. He nodded, eyes locked on mine. I want you, he said. All of it. The messy, beautiful, complicated you. I want to earn your trust back, whatever it takes. And just like that, we began again. It wasn't perfect. God, it wasn't even close. There were moments when I still questioned him. Times I pulled back without meaning to. But he didn't run. He stayed. He listened. When I woke up from a nightmare and couldn't breathe, he held me. When I panicked after seeing a text from an unknown number on his phone, he handed it to me without flinching. Slowly, painfully, we rebuilt something out of the wreckage, something real. The biggest change, though, came not from him but from me. I stopped waiting for the next betrayal. I stopped measuring love by how much it hurt. I started saying what I needed out loud. I started letting myself need someone without shame. That was the scariest part. But it was also the most freeing. Months later, on a cold November morning, I found a note taped to my door. Ethan's handwriting. Meet me on the roof. Dress warm. I rolled my eyes, half laughing, but my chest fluttered with something light. When I got there, the rooftop was lit with strings of fairy lights, and a small table was set with hot cocoa, a warm blanket, and our favorite music playing softly from a speaker. He stood there, hands in his pockets, a little nervous. I didn't want to wait for some perfect moment, he said, because this isn't perfect, but it's real, and it's ours, and I'm done running from that. He didn't drop to one knee. He didn't ask for forever. He just asked if I was still willing to choose him, and I said yes, because love isn't always about fairy tales or flawless trust. Sometimes it's about screwing up, owning it, and choosing each other anyway, even when it hurts, especially when it heals.